My name is Danielle, and I am 32 years old. For 8 years, I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and saved every penny I could. Last spring, I finally bought my own house, a small 3-bedroom place in the suburbs with a garden I planted myself. I love that house like I love my own heart. But one Friday evening, my mother called with news that changed everything. She told me my sister Delia and her husband Leon would be moving into my house next month. She did not ask. She simply informed me. My answer shocked them all. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about standing up for yourself and finding your own path speak to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, this journey is going to take some unexpected turns, and you will not want to miss a single moment. To understand why that phone call hurt so deeply, I need to take you back to the beginning. I need to tell you about my family and the patterns that shaped who I became. I grew up in a modest house in Ohio with my parents, Patricia and Robert, and my older sister, Delia. Delia is 4 years older than me, and from the moment I can remember, she occupied a special place in our family. She was the firstborn, the one who came first. And according to my mother, that meant she deserved to come first in everything else too. Growing up, the differences were everywhere. Delia had the bigger bedroom with the window that faced the sunrise. I had the small room next to the laundry where the washing machine hummed through my homework hours. Delia got new dresses for school dances while I wore her hand-me-downs hemmed and adjusted, but never quite fitting right. When Delia wanted to go to summer camp, my parents found the money. When I asked for piano lessons, my mother said we needed to be practical about our budget. I learned early that my role in the family was to accommodate. My mother had a favorite phrase she repeated whenever conflict arose between Delia and me. She would look at me with those tired eyes and say, "You need to let your sister have this one. You are the understanding one." As a child, I believed her. I thought being the understanding one was something to be proud of. I did not realize then that understanding had become another word for invisible. Delia grew into someone who expected the world to bend around her. I do not say this to be cruel. It is simply what happened when a person is never told no. She floated through high school with average grades and grand plans. She started college, but dropped out after 2 semesters to follow a boyfriend to California. When that relationship ended, she came home and started working retail jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a few months before something better supposedly came along. My mother always had an explanation for Delia. She said Delia was still finding herself. She said Delia had a creative spirit that could not be contained by ordinary jobs. She said Delia just needed a little more time and a little more support. That support usually came in the form of money from my parents, money that seemed endless when Delia needed it, and mysteriously scarce when I asked for anything. I took a different path. I studied hard. I earned scholarships. I went to college for accounting not because I loved numbers, but because I knew it would give me stability. I worked 2 part-time jobs throughout school, serving coffee in the mornings and shelving books at the library in the evenings. I graduated with honors and started building my career, step by careful step. By the time I was 28, I had saved enough for a down payment on a house. It was not a big house. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with outdated cabinets that I planned to replace someday. But it was mine. My name on the deed. My money in the mortgage, my future in every square foot of that property. My mother's reaction when I bought the house still echoes in my memory. She visited once, walked through the rooms with her lips pressed tight, and said 3 bedrooms for one person. That seems like a lot of space to waste. She did not congratulate me. She did not tell me she was proud. She simply calculated the empty rooms like they were resources being hoarded. Now let me tell you about Leon. Delia met him about 3 years before that fateful phone call. She married him after only 6 months of dating a rushed courthouse wedding that my parents celebrated like it was the social event of the season. Leon worked in construction, but the word worked is generous. He took jobs when he felt like it and found excuses when he did not. He was charming in the way that some people are charming, all smiles and smooth talk, until you looked closer and noticed that the words never match the actions. Leon borrowed money from my parents constantly. He always had a reason. His truck needed repairs. A client had not paid him. He was between jobs but had something big lined up. My parents gave him money every time, and every time the repayment date came and went without a dollar returned. 2 years before that Friday phone call, Leon called me directly. His voice was friendly casual, like we were old friends catching up. He told me his car had broken down and he needed $5,000 to fix it. He said he needed the car for work, that without it, he could not provide for my sister. He promised to pay me back within 3 months. I did not want to lend him the money. Something in my gut told me it was a mistake. But my mother called right after Leon did, her voice heavy with disappointment. She told me that family helps family. She reminded me of everything she had sacrificed for me growing up. She made me feel like refusing would make me the worst kind of person. So I transferred the money. 3 months passed, then 6 months, then a year. When I finally asked Leon about repayment, he laughed and said things were tight right now. When I pushed harder, Delia called me crying and accused me of putting money above family. My mother told me I was being petty over a small amount, $5,000. Nearly 4 months of my careful saving dismissed as nothing. I started keeping my distance from my family after that. Not dramatically, not with announcements or arguments. I simply stopped volunteering for things. I stopped being the first one to offer help. I called my mother once a week, because that felt like the minimum required to avoid lectures, but I kept the conversations short and surface level. My mother noticed the change and did not like it. She started making comments about how I had become cold. She said success had changed me. She told family friends that she worried about me alone in that big house, disconnected from the people who loved me. She never once asked if maybe I had reasons for stepping back. She never wondered if perhaps she had played a role in pushing me away. That was my life before the phone call. A careful balance of minimal contact and self-protection. I had finally learned to say no, at least in small ways. But I had no idea that my boundaries were about to face the ultimate test. That Friday evening started like any other end of a long work week. I pulled into my driveway as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My shoulders ached from sitting at my desk for 10 hours, and all I wanted was a quiet night at home. I changed into comfortable clothes, poured myself a glass of wine, and started preparing dinner. I was chopping vegetables when my phone rang. The screen showed my mother's name, and I felt a small twist of surprise. She usually called on Sundays. A Friday call meant something was different. I answered with my usual greeting, and my mother's voice came through unusually bright. She asked about my health, my job, whether I was eating enough. She wondered if I had been to the doctor lately. She inquired about my neighbors and my garden, and a dozen other details she normally never bothered with. The small talk made me nervous. My mother was not a small talk person. She preferred direct communication demands dressed up as requests. This warmth felt strategic, like she was softening the ground before dropping something heavy. After about 5 minutes of this unusual pleasantness, her tone shifted slightly. She said she had something important to discuss. She said she had been thinking about it for a while and had finally made a decision that would help the whole family. My stomach tightened. I set down my knife and leaned against the counter, bracing myself. My mother explained that Delia and Leon were in trouble. They could not pay their rent anymore. Their landlord had given them notice, and they had to be out by the end of the month. She said they had nowhere to go, and she and my father could not take them in because their house was too small and my father's health required quiet. I listened, waiting for the request I knew was coming. But it was not a request. My mother said, "So I have decided that Delia and Leon will move into your house next month. You have 3 bedrooms and you live alone. There is plenty of space. They will stay just until they get back on their feet." I stood in my kitchen, the vegetables half chopped on the cutting board, the wine going warm in my glass, and I could not believe what I was hearing. She had not asked me. She had told me. She had made a decision about my house, my life, my space, without even a pretense of consultation. I asked her to repeat what she had said, not because I had not heard, but because I needed time to process. She repeated it almost word for word, with a note of impatience creeping into her voice. She said she had already told Delia to start packing. She said Leon was looking forward to being closer to some construction contacts in my area. I tried to stay calm. I asked why she had not asked my permission first. She made a sound that was almost a laugh and said she knew I would agree because I was a good person and good people help their family. She said my agreement was assumed. She said she did not see why I would object to helping my own sister in her time of need. I pointed out that 3 bedrooms did not mean unlimited space. I explained that I needed my home office for work, that I had routines and privacy requirements, that having 2 extra people would disrupt everything. She dismissed each point like she was swatting away gnats. She said I could work at the dining table. She said privacy was less important than family. She said Delia and Leon would not be any trouble at all, just like having guests. I asked the obvious question. Why could Delia and Leon not stay with her and my father? She had answers ready. Their house only had 2 bedrooms. My father needed rest and quiet because of his blood pressure. They could not possibly accommodate 2 extra people. But I could. A single woman living alone was expected to absorb the chaos that a retired couple with a paid-off house could not handle. The math did not make sense unless you understood that the math was never really about bedrooms. It was about who could be pushed and who could not. I tried one more time. I said I needed to think about it. I said this was a big decision that would affect my daily life. I asked for time to consider. My mother's voice turned cold. She asked what there was to think about. She said Delia was family, not a stranger off the street. She accused me of always being difficult, always finding reasons to avoid helping people. She brought up her own sacrifices, the years she spent raising me, the money she spent on my childhood. She wielded guilt like a weapon she'd been sharpening for decades. She ended the call by saying she would tell Delia to expect the house keys by next weekend. Then she hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that call. The vegetables dried out on the cutting board. The dinner I had planned sat abandoned. My wine glass stayed untouched because I had lost my appetite for everything. What I felt was not just anger, though anger was certainly part of it. I felt erased. My mother had looked at my home, my accomplishment, my independence, and she had seen only empty space to be filled with someone else's needs. She had not considered my feelings, because my feelings had never been part of her calculations. I was not a person in her equation. I was a resource. That night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, I thought about every time I had been pushed aside, every hand-me-down dress, every skipped piano lesson, every time I was told to be understanding while Delia was told she was special, every dollar I had lent that was never returned, every sacrifice I had made that was never acknowledged. Something shifted inside me. Not dramatically, not like a switch being flipped. More like a door that had been slowly loosening, finally swinging open. I realized that I had spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to people who would never see it. I had worked twice as hard and asked for half as much, and it still was not enough. It would never be enough because the problem was not my effort. The problem was a family system that had designated me as the giver and Delia as the taker, and no amount of giving would ever change that assignment. If I let Delia and Leon move in, I knew exactly what would happen. They would stay for months that would stretch into years. They would not pay rent or contribute to bills. They would leave messes for me to clean and expect me to work around their schedules. My home would stop being my sanctuary and become my prison. And when I finally reached my breaking point, I would be the villain for asking them to leave. I could not let that happen. I would not let that happen. For the first time in my life, I was going to choose myself, and I was going to make sure no one could stop me. The memories came flooding back that night, one after another, like a dam had broken somewhere deep inside my mind. I lay in my dark bedroom and let myself remember things I had tried hard to forget. When I graduated from high school, I was 3rd in my class. I had worked so hard for that ranking, staying up late to study, while Delia went to parties turning down invitations so I could focus on my future. My guidance counselor said I had a real shot at academic scholarships if I kept my grades up in college. But when I got into the state university, my parents sat me down and explained the financial situation. They said they had saved some money for education, but it was not enough to cover everything. They said I would need to work and take out loans. They apologized, but they said there was nothing else they could do. I accepted this because I had no other choice. I got a job serving coffee at 6 in the morning before my classes started. I shelved books at the library until closing time. I ate cheap ramen and split rent on a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. I graduated with $30,000 in student debt that took me 8 years to pay off. It was not until 3 years after I graduated that I learned the truth. My aunt let it slip at Thanksgiving dinner, a casual comment about how generous my parents had been to help Delia start her business. When I asked what she meant, the table went quiet. My mother tried to change the subject, but my aunt, bless her heart, did not read the signals. She told me that my parents had given Delia $20,000 to open an online clothing boutique. This was around the same time they told me they could not afford to help with my college tuition. Delia's boutique failed within 6 months. She never paid back a dollar of that money, and no one had ever thought to mention any of this to me. When I confronted my mother later, she had her justifications ready. She said Delia needed that money more because Delia did not have a college degree and had fewer options. She said I was smart and capable and would figure things out on my own. She said it was different because Delia's situation was more desperate. She never once acknowledged that she had lied to me, that she had let me struggle while handing my sister a small fortune. Then there was Delia's wedding. My parents spent $15,000 on the ceremony and reception, a number I learned, because my father complained about it to my uncle after a few drinks. $15,000 for a courthouse wedding that turned into a backyard party. $15,000 for a marriage to a man no one really knew. As Delia's maid of honor, I was expected to cover my own expenses. The dress she chose cost $400. The shoes were another $100. Hair and makeup on the wedding day was $200 more. I had to take 2 weeks off work without pay to help with preparations, because Delia insisted she needed me there. By the time the wedding was over, I had spent nearly $1,000 and lost another $1,500 in missed wages. At the reception, Delia opened my gift in front of everyone. It was a beautiful set of crystal wine glasses that had cost me more than I could really afford. She looked at the box, then looked at me and said, "Oh, that is nice, I guess." Her dismissal stung, but what hurt more was my mother nodding in agreement, as if my gift confirmed something disappointing about me. And then there was the money I lent Leon, $5,000 that I had saved over nearly 4 months of careful budgeting. I had been planning to use that money to replace my aging car. Instead, I handed it over because my mother made me feel like refusing would make me a monster. For 2 years, I watched Leon drive around in the car I had helped fix while my own vehicle developed new problems every month. Whenever I brought up the debt, I was made to feel petty and materialistic. Delia told me that family does not keep score. My mother said I should not let money come between sisters. Leon just smiled and promised he would pay me back soon, a promise as empty as all his others. There was the time 3 years before the phone call when Delia needed a place to stay while she looked for a new apartment. She had broken up with her boyfriend before Leon and had nowhere to go. I offered my couch for 2 weeks. 2 weeks became 2 months. During that time, Delia did not pay for anything. She ate my food, used my toiletries, ran up my electric bill, and never once offered to contribute. She invited her new boyfriend, the man before Leon, to spend nights at my place without asking permission. She left messes everywhere and got annoyed when I asked her to clean up after herself. When I finally told her she needed to find her own place, she went crying to our mother. The next day, Patricia called me screaming. She accused me of throwing my own sister onto the street. She said I was heartless and selfish. She said she did not know where she had gone wrong with me. Delia moved into a friend's apartment that same week, an option she apparently had all along but had not mentioned, because staying with me was easier. And then there was my 31st birthday. I had planned a small dinner at a restaurant with my family. Nothing fancy, just a chance to spend time together. I made the reservation weeks in advance and reminded everyone multiple times. On the morning of my birthday, my mother called. Her voice was apologetic but firm. She said they could not come to dinner because Delia needed help moving to a new apartment. She said they were sorry, but Delia's situation was urgent. She said we could celebrate my birthday another time. I ate dinner alone that night at a table set for 4. I told the waiter that my party had been delayed, but he saw the empty chairs, and the pity in his eyes made everything worse. No one in my family called to wish me happy birthday. No one sent a card or a text or even an email. I was 31 years old, and I had never felt more invisible. Lying in bed after my mother's phone call about Delia moving in, I let myself feel the full weight of these memories. I had spent years minimizing them, telling myself that family was complicated, that no one was perfect, that I needed to be more understanding. But understanding had gotten me nothing but more pain. Being the good daughter had earned me nothing but more demands. I thought about what would happen if I agreed to let Delia and Leon live with me. I would lose my home office, the room where I worked extra hours to advance my career. I would lose my peaceful mornings and quiet evenings. I would lose the ability to walk around my own house without navigating someone else's stuff. I would lose $5,000 more in the form of unpaid utilities and eaten groceries. And eventually, when it all became too much, I would lose my relationship with my family anyway, because standing up for myself always made me the bad guy. Or I could refuse, and I could lose my relationship with my family right now on my own terms, while keeping everything else intact. When I framed it that way, the choice became clear. The relationship I was so afraid of losing was not actually giving me anything worth keeping. It was a one-way street where I gave, and they took where I bent, and they demanded more bending. Losing that relationship would not be a loss at all. It would be freedom. I fell asleep that night with a strange feeling of calm. I did not know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew that I was not going to do what my mother expected. For the first time in 32 years, I was going to write my own story. The idea came to me on Saturday morning while I was drinking my coffee and watching the sun rise over my garden. I remembered a conversation from a few months earlier, a casual chat with my boss, Margaret, about the company's expansion plans. Margaret had mentioned that our company was opening a new office in a coastal city, about 300 miles away. She had asked if I might be interested in transferring there someday. At the time, I had politely declined. I loved my house. I loved my garden. I did not want to leave everything I had built. But sitting in my kitchen that Saturday morning, I realized that everything I had built was about to be taken from me anyway. My mother had already decided that my house belonged to Delia and Leon. If I stayed, I would have to fight every day to keep what was mine. The constant battle would drain me. Even if I won, I would lose. What if I did not stay to fight? What if I simply left? The thought was terrifying at first. I had never lived more than an hour from my childhood home. I did not know anyone in that coastal city. Starting over at 32 felt reckless, something a younger person might do, not someone who had spent 8 years building stability. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea made sense. If I transferred to the new office, I would have a job waiting for me. If I sold my house, I would have money to start fresh. And if I moved 300 miles away, my mother could not simply assign my living space to Delia. You cannot invade a home that no longer exists. By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I called Margaret before I even finished my first cup of coffee. She was surprised to hear from me so early, and even more surprised by what I was asking. She said the position at the new office was still open, but she had not expected me to change my mind. I told her my circumstances had changed, and I was ready for a new chapter. She said she would talk to the regional director and get back to me by the end of the week. She called back on Tuesday. The job was mine if I wanted it. The company would cover part of my relocation expenses. I could start in 1 month. I said yes before she finished the sentence. Next, I called a real estate agent. His name was Marcus, and he had helped a coworker sell a house the previous year. I explained my situation in general terms, saying that I needed to sell quickly but quietly. I did not want the listing on major websites. I did not want a sign in my yard. I wanted a private sale fast and discreet. Marcus came to see the house that same afternoon. He walked through each room nodding and making notes. He said the market was strong. He said houses in my neighborhood were selling fast. He had several clients actively looking for properties just like mine. He could have interested buyers within the week. I told him to move forward immediately. He shook my hand and promised to be in touch soon. While I waited for Marcus to find buyers, I started the slow work of preparing to leave. Every evening after work, I packed a few boxes. I wrapped dishes in newspaper and sealed books in tape. I sorted through years of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. Each box I packed felt like progress toward freedom. During this time, my mother called twice. Each conversation was surreal. She talked about Delia's packing progress, about what furniture they would bring, about how nice it would be for the sisters to live together. I responded with vague noises of acknowledgement, neither agreeing nor refusing. I needed to keep her calm until my plans were in place. Delia called once too. Her voice had that particular tone she always used when she wanted something sweet and slightly manipulative. She said she was so grateful I was helping them out. She said we were going to have so much fun as roommates. She talked about how she and Leon would help with household chores and maybe even cook dinner sometimes. Her promises were as hollow as Leon's promise to repay me, but I played along. I said that sounded lovely. I said I was looking forward to it. I felt a little guilty for the deception, but not guilty enough to stop. 2 weeks after I listed the house, Marcus called with amazing news. A young couple had fallen in love with the property. They were pre-approved for a mortgage and ready to move quickly. They had offered $5,000 above my asking price. I accepted immediately. We scheduled the closing for the following week. The night before the closing, I stood in my nearly empty living room and looked around. The walls were bare, the furniture was mostly gone, and cardboard boxes lined every room. This house had been my dream, and now I was walking away from it. But dreams change. Sometimes the thing you wanted most becomes the thing holding you back. I slept on an air mattress that night. In the morning, I signed papers that transferred my house to strangers who would love it as much as I had. I deposited the check and paid off the remainder of my mortgage. When all the numbers were calculated, I had enough money to start my new life with a comfortable cushion. That afternoon, I rented a small moving truck. I loaded everything I was keeping, which was not much, just clothes and books, and a few pieces of furniture that held sentimental value. The rest I had donated or sold or left behind. I stood in the driveway of what used to be my house and took one last look. The new owners would move in next weekend. By then, I would be 300 miles away, building a life that belonged only to me. I had not told my family any of this. As far as they knew, I was home waiting for Delia and Leon to arrive. The confrontation was coming, but I wanted it on my terms. I wanted them to see the empty house, to understand that I had chosen myself over their expectations. I wanted the lesson to be undeniable. The confrontation came on a Sunday morning, 2 days before the new owners were scheduled to take possession. I had returned to the house to do a final walkthrough and make sure I had not left anything behind. The rooms echoed with emptiness. The walls showed faint outlines where pictures used to hang. I was checking the closets one last time when I heard the sound of vehicles pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window and felt my heart rate spike. My parents' car was there, and behind it was a moving truck. Delia and Leon had arrived to claim their new home. For a moment, I considered hiding. I could wait until they discovered the empty house and left in confusion, but that felt cowardly. I had made my choice, and I needed to own it. I walked to the front door and opened it just as Delia was reaching for the handle. Her face registered surprise, then relief, then confusion, as she looked past me into the empty living room. She asked why the house looked so bare. She asked where all my furniture had gone. I stepped outside onto the porch, making them all step back. My mother was there, her face already settling into familiar lines of suspicion. My father stood slightly behind her, his expression unreadable. Leon was by the moving truck, one hand on the door handle frozen in place. I told them simply that I was glad they were all here because I had something important to tell them. Then I said the words I had been rehearsing in my head for weeks. This is not my house anymore. I sold it. The new owners move in next weekend. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched understanding dawn on their faces one by one. Delia's mouth fell open. Leon dropped his hand from the truck door. My mother's eyes widened, then narrowed, then widened again. She was the first to speak. She asked me what I meant, what I was talking about, how I could have sold my house without telling them. I explained calmly. I told her that it was my house bought with my money, with my name on every document. I reminded her that I had never agreed to let Delia and Leon move in. She had assumed my agreement, but assumptions are not contracts. My mother's face turned red. She started shouting words tumbling over each other in a torrent of outrage. She said I had no right to make such a decision without consulting the family. She said I had betrayed my sister. She called me selfish and cold and cruel. She said she did not know how she had raised such a heartless daughter. I let her finish. I had heard variations of this speech my whole life, and it no longer had the power to hurt me. When she finally ran out of words, I responded quietly. I told her that for 32 years, I had been the one who sacrificed. I had been the one who gave up what I wanted, so Delia could have what she wanted. I had been the one who was told to be understanding while Delia was never asked to understand anything. I said that I had paid for my own education while they funded Delia's failed business. I had spent my own money on her wedding while being mocked for my gift. I had lent Leon money that was never repaid and been called petty for asking about it. I had let Delia live with me before, and she had taken advantage of every kindness I offered. I told them I was done. I said no more. Delia started crying. She wailed that I had ruined her life, that now she and Leon had nowhere to go, that everything was falling apart because of me. Her tears might have moved me once. Now they just looked like another manipulation. I reminded her that she was a grown woman. I pointed out that she was 4 years older than me. I suggested that perhaps it was time for her to solve her own problems, instead of expecting everyone else to solve them for her. Leon finally spoke up. He called me selfish. He said I had always been jealous of Delia, that I had never supported the family, that I only cared about money and status. I looked at him and said just one thing. I asked him where my $5,000 was, the one he had promised to repay in 3 months, the one I had never seen again. He turned red and looked away. He had no answer because there was no answer. He had taken my money and never intended to give it back, and everyone standing there knew it. Then my father spoke. He had been silent this whole time, watching, listening. When he opened his mouth, everyone turned to look at him. He asked my mother a simple question. Why had she not asked Danielle before making this decision? My mother sputtered. She said it was obvious that Danielle would help that family helps family, that she should not have had to ask. My father shook his head slowly. He said that this was Danielle's house. He said that Danielle had worked hard for it. He said that he had watched for years, as they all expected too much from her, and gave nothing in return. He said he was not surprised she had decided to leave. My mother turned on him, shocked and angry, demanding to know whose side he was on. He said quietly that he was on the side of fairness, and fairness had not been present in this family for a very long time. I could have cried in that moment. For all the years my father had stayed silent. At least, now at the end he had spoken the truth. He had seen me. He had acknowledged what everyone else refused to admit. I told them I was moving away. 300 miles, a new job, a new city, a new life. I said I did not know when I would see them again. My mother demanded to know where I was going. I told her that information was not hers to have anymore. Delia begged me to reconsider. She promised things would be different, that she and Leon would pay rent, that they would help with everything. Her promises meant nothing. They were just words, pretty sounds with no substance behind them. I told her goodbye. I told them all goodbye. Then I walked to my car, which was packed with the last of my belongings, and I drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw them standing in the driveway of a house that was no longer mine. They were arguing with each other, arms waving, voices raised. I could not hear what they were saying, but I did not need to. Their drama was no longer my responsibility. I merged onto the highway and pointed my car toward the coast. 300 miles ahead of me was a new beginning. Behind me was a lifetime of being taken for granted. I was leaving it all behind and I was never looking back. The drive took 6 hours. I stopped once for gas and coffee, standing in a parking lot and breathing air that smelled different, cleaner somehow, like the future had its own atmosphere. When I arrived at my new city, the sun was setting over the ocean. I could see it from the highway, a glittering expanse of blue and gold that seemed to promise something I could not name. I had never lived near the ocean before. The vastness of it felt appropriate, like my life had expanded to match. My new apartment was small but bright. 2 bedrooms, which felt luxurious after losing my house with a balcony that faced the water. I spent the first night on the same air mattress I had used in my empty house. But this time the emptiness felt different. It felt like possibility instead of loss. The first week was practical. Unpacking boxes, learning the neighborhood, finding the grocery store and the dry cleaner and the coffee shop that would become my regular morning stop. I explored my new office and met my new colleagues. Everyone was welcoming, and I started to believe that maybe I had made the right choice. Margaret had transferred along with me to help launch the new branch. She became an unexpected source of support, inviting me to lunch and introducing me to her friends. She never asked why I had changed my mind about relocating, and I appreciated her discretion. Some stories are not meant to be shared with coworkers. The hardest part was the quiet. I had spent so many years surrounded by family drama that the absence of it felt disorienting. No angry phone calls from my mother, no demands from Delia, no guilt trips or manipulation or expectations I could never meet. Just silence and the sound of the ocean and the slowly forming shape of a life that belonged only to me. My family did try to contact me. My mother called repeatedly for the first few weeks. I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages progressed through a predictable cycle. First came anger accusations of betrayal and selfishness. Then came guilt reminders of everything she had done for me. Then came bargaining promises that things would change if I would just come home. Finally came silence as even she ran out of words. Delia sent text messages filled with dramatic declarations. She said I had abandoned her. She said I had broken the family. She said she would never forgive me. I deleted each message without responding. Her drama was not my crisis to manage anymore. The only message I saved was from my father. It came about a month after I left a simple text that said, "I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. I should have taught you how to do that a long time ago. I am sorry I did not. I love you." I read that message so many times the words blurred. Then I wrote back. I told him I loved him too. I said that maybe someday when things had settled, we could talk. He replied with a heart emoji, and somehow that was enough for now. I joined a running club because I needed something to do with the restless energy that filled me. I had never been athletic, but something about this new life made me want to try new things. The group met 3 times a week at dawn, pounding out miles along the coastal trails. I was terrible at first, gasping and struggling to keep up, but I got better. Running taught me that discomfort was temporary, that the only way forward was through. One of the other runners was a woman named Harper, who worked at a marketing firm downtown. She was a few years younger than me, with an easy laugh and a direct way of speaking that I found refreshing. We started grabbing coffee after runs, then lunch on weekends, then dinner on Friday nights. She told me about her own difficult family parents who had chosen her brother over her at every turn. When I told her my story, she nodded like she understood completely. Maybe she did. 6 months after I moved, I realized I was happy. not the fragile conditional happiness I had known before, dependent on pleasing others and avoiding conflict. This was something sturdier, something built from the inside out. I had a job I enjoyed, friends who valued me, an apartment that felt like home. I had started writing in a journal, processing the years of pain I had carried. I was learning to forgive myself for not leaving sooner. And then I met James. He was a regular at my coffee shop, a tall man with kind eyes who always ordered black coffee and read actual paper newspapers. One morning, the shop was crowded, and he asked if he could share my table. We talked for an hour before either of us looked at the time. James was different from the men I had dated before. He listened more than he talked. He asked questions and actually waited for the answers. When I told him about my family carefully and in pieces, he did not try to fix anything or offer advice. He just held space for my pain and let me know I was not alone. We took things slowly. Coffee dates became dinner dates, became weekend hikes, became something deeper. He met Harper and my other new friends. I met his sister and his college roommate. We built a life together, one careful brick at a time. When James asked about my family, I was honest. I told him they were complicated. I said I was taking space from them to heal. He respected that without pushing for more. He had his own complicated history, a father who drank too much, a mother who had left when he was young. He understood that sometimes love meant distance. By the time a year had passed since my move, I felt like a different person. Not entirely new, but evolved. The Danielle who had let herself be used and dismissed and taken for granted was still inside me somewhere, but she no longer ran the show. This new Danielle had boundaries. This new Danielle knew her worth. This new Danielle understood that saying no was not selfish, but necessary. I had built a life that no one could take from me because I had finally stopped giving it away. The call from my mother came on Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year and 3 months after I had left. I almost did not answer. The holidays had been peaceful here in my new home, filled with friends and chosen family, and the simple joy of belonging. I did not want to disturb that peace, but something made me pick up the phone. Maybe it was the season with its messages of forgiveness and renewal. Maybe it was simply time. I was in a strong place now, strong enough to face whatever she had to say. Her voice sounded different, older, tired. She did not start with accusations or guilt trips. She started with something I had never heard from her before. She said she was sorry. I sat down slowly, not trusting my ears. I asked her to say that again. She repeated it. She said she had been thinking for a long time about everything that had happened. She said my father had been talking to her, pushing her to see things from my perspective. She said she had not realized how unfairly she had treated me all those years. She said she understood now why I had left, and she did not blame me anymore. I listened in silence, waiting for the catch. With my mother, there was always a catch, but the catch did not come. Instead, she told me about Delia. My sister had gotten a job, a real job, at an insurance company. She and Leon had divorced finally, after years of his empty promises. Delia was living in a small apartment on her own, learning how to manage her own life for the first time. It was hard for her, my mother admitted, but she was doing it. My mother said that watching Delia struggle had opened her eyes. She realized that by always rescuing Delia, she had prevented my sister from growing up, and by always expecting me to sacrifice, she had driven me away. She said she had been wrong, and she wanted the chance to make things right. I did not know how to respond. This was everything I had wanted to hear for 32 years, but hearing it now felt surreal. Could people really change that much? Could my mother actually see me after a lifetime of looking past me? I told her I needed time to think. She said she understood. She asked only one thing. She asked if maybe someday I might come home for a visit. Not to fix anything or take on any burdens, just to see the family. I said maybe. I said someday. I said I would let her know. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony and watched the ocean turn purple and gold in the fading light. I thought about forgiveness and what it really meant. Forgiving my mother did not mean forgetting what had happened. It did not mean pretending the pain had not been real. It meant releasing the anger so it could not poison me anymore. It meant choosing freedom over resentment. I thought about Delia struggling on her own for the first time, learning lessons she should have learned 20 years ago. I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not satisfaction at her difficulty, something closer to hope. Maybe we could have a real relationship someday, one built on mutual respect instead of imbalance. Maybe not, but the possibility existed now in a way it never had before. And I thought about myself, about the journey from that small girl who was always told to be understanding to the woman who finally understood that she mattered too. It had taken losing everything to gain myself. It had taken leaving home to find one. The lessons I learned from this experience are simple, but hard won. First, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Caring for yourself is not selfish. It is essential. If you drain yourself dry for others eventually, there will be nothing left. You have to protect your own resources so you can genuinely help when you choose to, not because you are obligated, but because you have something to give. Second, family is important, but not at any cost. Blood ties do not give anyone the right to mistreat you. Some relationships can only become healthy with distance. Setting boundaries with family is not betrayal. It is survival. Third, saying no does not make you a bad person. It makes you a person who respects yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you chip away at your own foundation. Learning to refuse is learning to stand. Fourth, sometimes the biggest change starts with one brave decision. I thought selling my house was the end of everything. It turned out to be the beginning of everything better. Change is terrifying, but staying trapped is worse. I still live in that coastal city 300 miles from where I grew up. James and I are engaged now, planning a small wedding for next spring. Harper will be my maid of honor. My father has promised to walk me down the aisle. Even my mother says she will come, though we are taking our relationship slowly, rebuilding it one honest conversation at a time. Delia and I have spoken a few times. The conversations are awkward, full of pauses and careful words. We are not sisters in the way I once hoped we might be, but we are something. We are trying, and sometimes trying is enough. Looking back, I would not change what I did. Moving 300 miles away saved my life. Not my physical life, but the life of my spirit, my sense of self, my ability to dream and grow and become. I learned that home is not a place others assign you. Home is the space you create for yourself, where you are valued and respected and free. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story,